Hey, everybody. Oh, I'm so excited to be doing this recording live with all of you today. As I'm recording it, it's Christmas Eve here in the United States. It's noon, but I see some of you coming from around the world and just welcome you all, no matter whether if you celebrate Christmas or not. It's a special time as we come to the end of the year. And I was guided from above to share with you one of my favorite stories, two actually, because there's a new ending to this, with a special PS that just happened this morning. So you'll want to stick around to the end for just a little bit more wonder of connecting with the spirit world. But one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel is Archangel Michael is Real. That's the title. It has had over 500,000 views. So why was I nudged to tell the story again? Well, I found out that some of the new members of my team, my assistants, haven't even heard this story. And so it's so beautiful and so filled with hope that this is the perfect time to share it. We're coming to a new year. We can always use a little hope. People feel our world is chaotic, and it can be. But this experience that I'm going to share with you and the one that followed are meant to show you that we truly are not alone, that angels and yes, archangels are very real. Now, I didn't know that my whole life. I was very skeptical when people talked about archangels and spoke about Michael and Raphael and Gabriel, and I'd read the books about archangels, but where was the evidence? Now I'm an evidence-based medium, but that was not my background. I have slides today to help tell this story, some of them actually taken during this experience that I'm going to share with you when Archangel Michael came to me and changed my entire worldview, left zero doubt in my mind that archangels are real and Archangel Michael can come to any of us. Not only will I be telling a story today, but I will be showing you some methods to help you attune and to show you why and how all of us can work with archangels. So why was I a little skeptical? First slide should make it pretty clear. This is me. I'll zoom in here for you. In my past life, in this current incarnation, 20 years as a Navy officer, as a Navy commander. There you see me with President Bush. No pictures here. Oh, here I am on the deck of an aircraft carrier handing a coin to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I was his aide de camp. And so back then I didn't believe in archangels. But after the death of my stepdaughter, I started meditating daily, trying to connect with Suzanne. Ultimately, I did connect with her quite clearly and learned that I can connect with other people's loved ones as well. But I did not expect that my desire to connect with those in the next level, the afterlife, which my guides remind me right now to call the ever life, would lead to other adventures in consciousness. And I'm here to tell you that we all can have those when we sit regularly and shut out the outer world by closing our eyes and ask to be shown the greater reality. So in my journey of discovery that there is more to this life, I became fascinated by a field called sacred geometry. Let me see. Here we go. So sacred geometry uses common geometric shapes to explain our world through symbology. But as I came to study sacred geometry, I learned that certain shapes carry different energy and information. And there was one specific shape that drew me in. It was a very complicated shape, and I didn't know why I was so fascinated with it. Well, we had a new neighbor and went back when we were living in Florida as all of this with Archangel Michael unfolded. She came over to dinner and she saw a book on my coffee table about sacred geometry. And she said, "Oh, you might like to meet my sister. She's an expert in sacred geometry. She's written several books." And I said, "Oh, would I? I have some questions for her." So she connected us and I got on the phone with my neighbor's sister and I mentioned this one particular shape. And she said, "Oh, that's a powerful one." And I said, yeah, but what do I do with it? I'm always interested in increasing my connection with those across the veil. Anything that I can do, and hopefully you feel the same way, to make it easier for us to connect with loved ones who have passed, to talk to our guides is something I want to hear all about. And she said, oh, it's very simple. You use it like an antenna. I said, wait a minute, antenna, what do you mean? And she said, sit in meditation, picture this shape around you in your mind and see if it makes a difference for you. When you're sitting, imagining it's around you, like an antenna, turn it up, tune it, and see what happens. And then turn the energy down, all using consciousness. So, here I am. Let me zoom in on this one. This is me back when I was aide to the chairman. I have his face blanked out there on purpose for privacy's sake. But here's our limo. We're driving around Washington, D.C. Back then, just as you see in this little caption above my head, the world was black and white. So to me, the thought of communing with angels by adjusting an antenna would have seemed crazy back then. But I have learned one thing, and here's my first piece of advice to you right now. Be willing to play. I hope that my left brain military background gives those of you who are more scientific, also left brain, permission kind of to be willing to say, all right, I'll play with this concept. So that's what I did. I went into meditation, went through my normal process. You can learn that process on my website and the gifts page. It's called the Bless Me Method. There's also a YouTube video about 7 steps to connecting with higher consciousness. I used that method. And when I got to the experience phase, the E in Bless Me at the end, I started picturing the points on this geometric shape that I had discussed with this woman. And she said, remember, make it bigger. So I expanded in my mind this so-called antenna, and I kid you not, I felt as if my whole body was growing. I felt, and I made a slide of this just for fun, I felt like Gulliver. You remember Gulliver? And the little people all around him. I felt as if, honestly, my head went through the roof of the house, my feet went into the earth, and this was an experience. And I thought, wow, that's tangible. So then in my mind's eye, I made the antenna smaller and I felt tiny. And then I said, that's really cool. Let me try this again. And I expanded it. And suddenly I felt my guides, Sanaya, who I talk to every day. And they said, we have a message for Dr. Gary Schwartz. Now, Dr. Schwartz, if I bring up this picture, is an afterlife researcher at the University of Arizona. I'd been out to his laboratory of consciousness, and he had done testing of my mediumship and validated that I was truly connecting with beings across the veil. And here are my guides, the first time I'm using this antenna, telling me they have a message for Dr. Schwartz. I copied it down on the notepad that I keep beside me when I meditate. And they specifically mentioned several people across the veil that he had been working with. I don't want to miss any of these details because everyone weaves together this web that will unfold for you here and will all make sense to you shortly. So I came out of that meditation. Oh, right. My guys just reminded me. Also, while I'm playing with the antenna for the first time, after the message for Dr. Schwartz, they very clearly said, get Lynn McTaggart's latest book. Now, Lynn McTaggart is the author of a book called The Field. It was one of the first books that I read when I started to question, how is this possible that I am connecting with non-physical beings? And what I found in Lynn's book, The Field, made beautiful sense to me. So I finished the meditation. First thing I did, go to my computer, send an email to Dr. Schwartz. By the way, before I forget, the next day I get an email back from him saying, amazing and perfect timing. So that message was relevant for him. The next thing, after sending that email, I go to Amazon.com and look up Lynn McTaggart's books. And I see that her latest book is this one at the time, The Intention Experiment. I had seen that on Amazon. It showed up randomly. You know how Amazon does that thing. If you're interested in this book, you might be interested in this one. And it never really snagged me. But now I have been given clear instructions by Spirit while using this sacred geometry shape as an antenna for the first time in meditation. So what did I do? You better believe I bought that book. Immediately, I downloaded the Kindle version, pulled up my iPad, and opened the book. Now, I don't know about any of you listening right now, but with my left brain, it's still online for me. I've tried to balance it with the right brain in this work, but I usually need to read a book straight through from page 1 to the end. I don't skip ahead. But when I opened this book on my Kindle reader and saw the table of contents, you will understand immediately why I jumped ahead to chapter 2. I'll show you why. Here's the book, The Intention Experiment, that I was told to buy the first time I used a sacred geometric shape as an antenna. I open it up and chapter 2, look at it, the human antenna. So this is hopefully the first wow moment of this recording, many to follow, so stay with me. So like I said, instead of reading chapter 1, I jumped straight to chapter 2. Are you, I got the goosebumps. Are you ready for how chapter 2 began? I'm going to zoom in so you can see it right away. Here's chapter 2. In 1951, at the age of 7, Gary Schwartz made a remarkable discovery. And it talks about him using the antenna on his family's television set. Yes, this is the same Dr. Gary Schwartz who Spirit had a message for the first time I used the human antenna of a geometric shape. Wow, so I think this is pretty cool. Well, a day or two later, I can't remember the exact timeline because all of this happened about 10 years ago. My husband Ty and I were heading for Sedona, Arizona. I have a documentary online. It's been there for about 10 years called Messages of Hope. You can find it on Amazon Prime and on YouTube. So if you haven't seen Messages of Hope, you will definitely enjoy that and learn some things about the spirit world and about all of us and our connection to all that is. But we, at that time, were taking the Messages of Hope documentary around the country for screenings. So we were headed to Sedona to show the movie there. So Ty and I flew into Phoenix, Arizona, which is a 2-hour drive from Sedona. We arrived late in the evening and didn't want to drive in the dark, so we got a hotel room. The next day, I woke up, and as always, I sit to meditate and get a daily message from Spirit. I've been doing this for 15 years, putting them online. All of you have access to my daily messages, especially in my Awakened Way app. That's free. 6,000 of those messages. And this is how I get them. I wake up every morning and sit to meditate. But here I am in a hotel room with my husband, nowhere for privacy. And he looks up sleepy and he says, "You want to go meditate?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'll just stay here and doze." So I went over in the corner of the hotel room and I sat while he rolled over away from me. And I sat and I meditated and I got a message from Sanaya, my guides. I typed it. No, at that time I was still writing these by hand. Today I type them on my iPad as I hear them, but I had my pad paper and I wrote Sanaya's message. And then I glanced over at Ty and I could tell he'd fallen back to sleep. So I remembered, oh yeah, that was really fun when I played with the sacred geometry as an antenna. If he's still sleeping, I think I'll try that again and see what happens when I make it big and make it small. So I'm getting the goosebumps already. So there I am sitting in this hotel in Phoenix, Arizona, and I construct in my mind's eye this shape all around me. I make it bigger, and suddenly I am filled with this presence of light, a being much more powerful than most that I experienced in my meditation. I would say I'd only experienced one or two others with this kind of power at that point. And I said, "Who are you?" And I listened and I heard Archangel Michael. Now, remembering my background, maybe you'll understand why my reaction was actually, "Oh no." Instead of being thrilled, I was actually a little bit skeptical, thinking, but I don't believe in archangels. But what did I tell you about being willing to play? So I know I feel this presence. So part of what I call the 3 E's of awakened living is educate yourself. Well, I've been educating myself about the spirit world by reading, but also experience for yourself. And that's what meditation does. But the third E is engage higher consciousness. I cannot deny this presence. And I've already engaged now by saying, "Who are you?" And I said then, to further engage, I don't know anything about the different archangels. I haven't believed in you. Which one are you? And he showed me a sword and a shield. And of course, now I feel silly because everybody that knows Archangel Michael knows that's those are his symbols. He always shows up that way. But I said to him, "Why have you come to me?" And now I'm writing what I hear. And he said, "I come to all those who fight for freedom and stand for love." I didn't know if this is accurate or not. Of course, later I Googled Archangel Michael much later, and it makes perfect sense that he would say that. But now the flow's going, and I'm writing as he's teaching me. And I saw him grab my hand, and off we went on this adventure in consciousness. And I'm taking notes of all of this. And here, I keep looking to my left because I have all of the slides coming up in front of me so that I don't miss any details. And here on this next slide is an actual copy of my notes from that morning. Over here, you can see I had filled in on the left side a whole page of notes. And the part in red is a close-up shot of the final words that Archangel Michael said to me in this first time I ever felt him. And I wrote it down here. I'll show you again. It says Hebrews, and you see Hebrews written there. And then he said, "This is coherence. This is coherence, a gift." Now you'll see scratched out letters there. I normally don't scratch out what I hear from spirit. The scratching came later because after he withdrew, I sat and I thought, there was one other time when I had a visit from someone this powerful, and it was Jesus. And he proved his presence to me by giving me a very relevant Bible verse. And having not studied the Bible, that was an outstanding way of showing to me that this was really him. That story is told in several of my videos online, including The Miracle of Christ Consciousness. But now here's Archangel Michael saying, Hebrews, this is coherence. This is coherence, a gift. Hebrews, I thought, what if that is another Bible verse? What if this archangel is trying to show me it's really him by something in Hebrews within the Bible? I realized that's in the Old Testament. I hadn't studied it, never read it. So Ty is still sleeping. So I pick up my iPad now and I do a quick search. I pull up a Bible and online and go to Hebrews. Quickly scanned it line by line. Nothing jumped out at me as relevant to archangels, nothing to any of the teaching he had given me. So I started to think, could I have made all of that up? Have you ever said that yourself when you have meditation? I want you to know that is very normal, very human, and it happens to all of us. Even though this powerful presence I could not deny, and I had words that never would have come out of my conscious mind, on the paper. Still, I questioned it. So Ty and I got up. We got in the car heading 2 hours north to Sedona. We stopped for breakfast. I want you to notice the timing is just kind of random. We stopped to get fuel. And on the way, I got to thinking, oh, here we are in Arizona. Dr. Gary Schwartz, who came up the first time I used this antenna, lives in Arizona. I think I'll give him a call and just see what's up. I mean, we validated that message from him the other day. So I get my cell phone and I call him and I said, hey, Gary, how you doing? He said, how are you, Suzanne? And I'm thinking, I am not going to tell him that I just had a visit with an archangel. I didn't mention it to Ty, and I'm certainly not going to mention it to Dr. Schwartz. He's a scientist. If I start talking about archangels, maybe he won't want to work with me anymore. He'll just dismiss me. That's the way my left brain was thinking. So I said to Gary, we're on our way to Sedona. I'm going to show my Messages of Hope documentary there. And Gary said, oh, Sedona. I was just there talking in a lecture about antennas with my friend Michael. I'm not kidding you, everybody. That is what he said. I document everything as it happens. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting coincidence. But hopefully, if you've been on this path long enough, you know there are no coincidences. So here we are on our way to Sedona. I've now talked to Gary Schwartz, and I just thanked him very much and said, well, we're off to go hiking, and I'll let you know how the documentary showing goes. So Ty and I had picked out a trail, lots of trails. This is a trail map in the Sedona area, because we weren't able to check into our hotel till 3 o'clock that afternoon, and the viewing of the documentary was later that evening. So again, didn't say anything to Ty about all of this, but my mind is now saying, wow, whew, goosebumps. What are the chances that I use my antenna, I sense Archangel Michael, I'm heading to Sedona, and Gary Schwartz was just there talking about antennas with a guy named Michael, and brings it up. So I looked upward, shifted my focus, and silently in the car said, Spirit, if Archangel Michael truly visited me this morning, I'm going to need a really big sign in Sedona. And that's how it works, guys. You do it from the heart, you shift your focus, and you ask clearly with a very strong intention. And then I let it go. We had picked out the specific trail we wanted to hike on, but I was so rattled that I looked down and I said, oh my gosh, Ty, I missed the trailhead. It's 3 miles behind us now. And he said, no worries. There's so many trails here. Just pick another one. And I look at the map. Remember maps? And I said, look, there's one just up ahead. Let's pull in here. And in fact, I believe the trail is called Dead Man's Trail. What a name, something like that, or Dead Horse Trail. Those of you who've been to Sedona would recognize it. We pull into the parking lot. This is an actual picture from that day. Look at the beautiful scenery. This was the backdrop, and it had just finished snowing, so there's nobody around. There's maybe 2 other cars in the parking lot. You can't see anybody. So we're already in our hiking gear. We're ready to go, and off we go on the trail. Now, I have to tell you something about my husband. He used to be in the Boy Scouts, and in his troop, you didn't talk when you're out in nature. You're out there by God to commune with nature. So I have learned not to talk when we're hiking. I want to chatter on and on a lot of times, but Ty just likes his silence. So I'm being very quiet, and I'm really thinking about this. Hebrews, this is Coherence, all the things that Archangel Michael allegedly said, but how would he possibly prove that that was real? Now, up ahead, I start to hear voices. Can't see anybody yet, but okay, somebody else here out on the trail. As we round a corner, I see that there's 2 people ahead of us heading the same direction, heading up the trail, but we're going much faster than them. We hike pretty rapidly. And as we catch up to them, I couldn't help but notice they're speaking a foreign language. I listened as we got really close. And normally we would just pass people and say, good morning. But my curiosity got the best of me. And as we passed, I said, good morning. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I was a foreign language major in college, and I don't recognize that language you're speaking. What language is that? Maybe you can see this coming. I didn't. The woman looked at me and she said, Hebrew. Ooh, okay. And right away I'm thinking, okay, that's a pretty big synchronicity. We're not even supposed to be on this trail. We could have been 10 minutes earlier, 10 minutes later. If we hadn't stopped for gas, we might have missed these people altogether if we hadn't stopped for breakfast. The timing was interesting. So we pass them and we walk on. And as I'm thinking this, I just started giggling. And Ty said, what? Like, why are you giggling on the trail? And I said, I just had the biggest synchronicity, but I'll tell you later. So we hike on and we come to this beautiful place for a photo. We stop to take the photo, and these people caught up with us. This is an actual photo right here of the couple. I've blurred out their faces walking towards us on the trail. So this time now, we're all stopped to enjoy the view. And Ty, who loves to talk to people, now that we're not hiking, we're just stopping, goes up to them and asks the same question he asks all strangers. Where are you from? And I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. And they said, we're from Israel. Well, that makes sense. They said, how about you? And we said, at the time, we were from Florida. We're not there anymore. And then Ty surprised me by asking, why are you here in Sedona? And the reason he surprised me is because I knew that after they told us, they would probably say to us, why are you here? And we weren't going to tell strangers that we're here to show a documentary about mediumship. It's just not something we bring up unless we know that people are comfortable talking about that. So that's exactly what happened. This Hebrew-speaking couple said, why are you here? But Ty really stunned me. Instead of saying just to host an event or whatever, he said, we're here to show my wife's documentary. And of course, the man, now curious, said, oh, what's it about? And he said, well, it's about my wife's unexpected transformation or transition from U.S. Navy commander to evidence-based medium. I was stunned. He just doesn't do this. So that's all part of the unfolding of this miracle on the trail. So this woman crosses her arms and she says, medium, U.S. Navy commander, I can understand, but I cannot believe in a medium. And I've learned not to argue with skeptics, but to speak people's language. And I looked at her and I said, oh, well, as a scientist, you would understand that what a medium tunes into are higher frequencies than most people can detect with their brain. But a medium has learned to bypass the filters of consciousness and attune to higher frequencies. Her husband then says, oh, I understand all about frequencies. I'm an electrical engineer. And my husband, I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool, good. My husband says, well, then you might be interested in the conversation my wife and I had on the flight out here yesterday. In meditation, she was using the concept of sitting inside an antenna of different shapes and seeing how that affected the connection. And she said it resulted in a really tangible result, the one with the Gulliver feeling, remember that? And the message for Gary Schwartz. And this man standing there, the Hebrew-speaking man on the trail, looked at me and he said, oh, my work involves antennas. And I looked at Ty and he looked at me and I looked at the woman and I said, that's a pretty good coincidence, don't you think? And she said, just a coincidence. I don't believe in mediums. And that's when I know to just leave it alone. So we thanked them. We headed off more farther up the trail and we got to the end of the trail, a big plateau with gorgeous views. And we're taking our pictures, and I turn around, and here they come again. They've caught up, but they're about 50 yards across this little plateau. And I did not want to engage them again, but suddenly I sense spirit saying to me, ask her her name. Oh, I got it wrong. They said, ask him his name, of course, because right away I'm thinking, wait a minute. You mean his name is Michael? No, it couldn't possibly be. But I've asked for a really big sign, and I'm already getting several outstanding signs. So I started walking towards them, now feeling a little bit like a stalker. And the funny thing is, as I approached them, I had the sensation of knowing that his name wasn't Michael, but I was still supposed to ask. So I went up to him and I again apologized. And I said, sorry to bother you, but this morning in meditation, when I was playing with this antenna concept, I heard the name Michael. That's all I was going to say about that. I wasn't going to mention archangels to these two scientists. And I looked at the man and I said, because I doubted now, your name isn't Michael, is it? And he said, no, it isn't. And he and his wife looked at each other, and she looked at me and she said, I am Michael. And then she caught herself admitting a little too much, and she said, but there is no E in it. And now again, I have the goosebumps as I did then, because I said, it doesn't matter. It's the same name. And I was told to ask you now what your name is for yet another coincidence. How do you explain that? I asked her, and she said, I cannot. And then she put me on the spot. She said, if you are able to do what you say you can, what is my specialty as a scientist? Well, wow, the sciences are big. It could be anything. And I did not want to prove her right that this higher frequency attunement doesn't work. And yet the possibility for a human to just on the spot tune in, well, my left brain kicked in and I said, well, it just doesn't work like that. And here's a spirit thing, because in that moment, her husband looked at me and said, use your antenna. Well, I had nothing to lose, did I? I might never see them again. And yet I've learned so much more to trust in the 10 years since then. But thank God I trusted in that moment. And I said, all right. And I turned to the side, and with total trust in spirit, I erected the shape around me that had worked twice so far in meditation. I envisioned it, I made it bigger, and I asked spirit, what is her specialty? I said it silently. I heard an instant response. I turned back and I looked her straight in the eyes and I said, cellular biology. And she went, like that. And I knew we'd hit a chord. And she quickly, suddenly went, but not exactly. And I will tell you all right now, in case I forget, much later through email, I discovered her specialty was structural biology. I've never heard the term. It would be very challenging for spirit to get into one's consciousness a term you've never heard. But structural biologists deal with cells. So they gave me cellular biology. And as I'm tuning in, I said, and I hear you deal with DNA. And she again said, not exactly. And I said, all right, close enough. And I could tell, and it later turned out they deal with RNA. So for me, that was all the validation I needed. We started walking back down the trail. I thanked them for the time and clearly she was not ready to admit that this was anything special. So we just left it at that. We continued down the trail, and I'm now in a state of great awe. Hebrews on a trail that I wasn't even supposed to talk to. Her name is Michael. He works with antennas. This is going beyond mere synchronicity after I ask for a sign. So we get to the bottom of the trail, and anybody who's ever hiked knows that sometimes you sign in on trail logs like the one you see here in this picture. This is the actual trail log place. On the trail we were on in Sedona, I opened it up, and sure enough, I've blanked out their name. There they were, two people from Israel, to prove that, sure enough, they were truly on the trail with me. So as we approached the car, I thought, man, I wish I had had a card, one of my cards to give to her, because who knows, she may just get a little intrigued by all of this and want to look it up. And so I missed my opportunity, but Spirit says, when you get to the trailhead, change your clothes in the little restroom that's there. Get your card and your notes. They will be there when you come out. It was that clear. So I said, Ty, I'm being instructed to change our clothes right here before we get to the hotel. He says, whatever, right? So we get our clothes. I get my card and my notes. I go in the little restroom. I come out, and sure enough, here they come. So stalker time number 3. I now walk up to them and I said, look, we're here to show this documentary this evening. I don't know if you're interested or if you even have the time, but here's my card. You can look me up online. If you're interested, come to the movie. And they did not. They must have had plans or I don't know what. But I will tell you later, that woman sent her sister to me. So she was truly intrigued. And as I handed her my card, I said, look, here are the notes that I wrote in meditation this morning. And you all are aware, these are the exact notes that I showed you earlier. I showed them to this Hebrew-speaking couple on the trail now. And I said, look, in that meditation where I heard Michael, look, I wrote it down. I even heard Hebrew. And here you are speaking Hebrew. How do you explain that? They looked at the notes that you can see here circled. I'll make it even bigger. Okay? Then they looked back at me, and the husband said, both of us in our work specialize in coherence. Both of them, and Archangel Michael had given it to me twice. This is coherence. I'm going to explain what that means at the very end of this video and how coherence can help you connect with spirit. This is coherence twice. And then I looked at that word, a gift, filled with goosebumps now. And I said, don't you see? You are the gift. You are helping me to validate that what I heard came from the source I was told it did. I'm so grateful. And this woman, looking at me then, said, this ability you have, don't you do anything useful with it? I hope you're laughing with me, because at that point I had given readings to hundreds and hundreds of people. I'd have people tell me that the readings had saved their lives at a time when they were so lost in grief. I had already started teaching people how to connect with guides and to their loved ones across the veil. And I thought, now I'm going to have to start teaching about archangels. But we weren't finished yet. I did tell her, I do hope I do something useful with it. Check out my website. And she later did, of course. So we get to downtown Sedona. We get to the hotel, and it's still too early to check in. So we're going to sit in the lobby. It's now drizzling rain, no more snow, rain, cold. But I suddenly heard my guides say, go across the street to that gift shop. There were a whole bunch of stores. Go to that gift shop. There is a gift there for you. I turned to Ty and said, Ty, I got to go to that gift shop. there's something there for me. I always say, ladies, that one works really well. Well, he didn't want to go out in the rain and he's not interested in gift shops. So he stayed there reading a book. I go running across the street in the cold sleet and rain, and I go into this gift shop. And what is right in front of me in a display case, right inside the door? This, the protective shield of Archangel Michael. And as if that might have been a coincidence, because this is, after all, Sedona, and they are into archangels and things like that, let me show you the picture on the wall directly above this amulet. Are you ready? This, my friends, is the exact shape that I had been using for an antenna. Not just one of them, but one big one. It's called the star tetrahedron. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them over that smaller one. I was pretty stunned by this time. And now my guides say, go next door to the bookstore and find a book about Archangel Michael. Well, of course, this being Sedona, I go next door and they had a book about Archangel Michael. I mean, hopefully by now you're saying unbelievable or I can't believe this. And I would understand why people might question this story. That's why I started off by going over my background. I have nothing, no reason to lie or exaggerate. When you go through these experiences, when you truly connect with spirit, there is no reason to embellish, to lie, to tell stories that aren't true. This one is exactly as it unfolded. So I start browsing through this book about Archangel Michael. And as my eyes scan the page, I notice a phrase that jumps out at me. And I thought, where did I just read those words? So I pull up my iPhone and I take the words that I'm reading in this book I was guided to minutes earlier, and I type them in a Google search. Here are the words that I can't read without my glasses. We'll make it bigger. The words say, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. I got the goosebumps because had I not just entertained strangers on the trail? Now, I know they were real in physical form because their name was in that log I showed you. But what is an angel? It's the definition of angel is messenger. And they were the messengers to me, to all of us hearing this story now, that Archangel Michael is real. But here's the kicker. When I hit return on that Google search, do you know where I had just heard those words? Some of you familiar with the Bible will know it came from, wait for it, Hebrews 13:2 in the Bible. These, my friends, are what we call NOEs, no other explanation moments, that we are connected to something so much greater. I had no doubt from that moment that Archangel Michael is real, and his teaching from the pages that he gave me in that meditation were truly profound and helpful. That's the angel on the trail story, my Archangel Michael is real story that I told in the video that 500,000 people watched. But there's more. There is another whole side to this now that I got to know Archangel Michael when he came back to visit me. And oh, by the way, as I was putting all of this together for you today, I thought about times when Archangel Michael has come to me in more than just the profound reading I'm going to share with you in a moment, but I couldn't recall any. And there's a PS to all of this that I wasn't aware I was going to share, but it just unfolded this morning on Christmas Eve. So stay with me a minute. I have just a few announcements I want to share with you. Speaking of gifts, okay, so just a few things to share with you before I tell you how Archangel Michael showed up again. We're talking about gifts. My greatest joy is to help you unfold your gifts, discover your own ability to connect across the veil. And to that end, on my website, look, this is a screenshot of my website. If you go to SuzanneGiesman.com sometime in the future, across the menu at the top, you'll see gifts. There are so many gifts. This is just the top before you scroll down. So many gifts. We have an ebook called Where Do I Begin? With a menu of all the ways to start your own spiritual journey. Here I mentioned my free Awaken Way app. That's one of the gifts. But be sure to scroll down, because when you do, you'll see meditation gifts, including ways to clear your chakras, ways to remember who you are as a soul. And I don't have all the screenshots, but there are ebooks, other guided meditations. If you're interested in sacred geometry and how to use that, what do we call it? The star tetrahedron as a tool for increasing your connection across the veil. I actually teach that in great detail in my online course. Here it's on the menu under courses in Serving Spirit Level 2. I would highly recommend you take Level 1 first, so that makes sense. But the whole lesson of Archangel Michael is real in the video that 500,000 people watch came from my Serving Spirit Level 2 class. If you're interested in any of my events, online or especially in person, frequently, please visit my homepage that you see here, SuzanneGiesman.com. Scroll down just under that banner, and we always update the featured events. And you'll see always the top 5 ways that you and I can connect, whether in person or live events. I have several really cool ones coming up in the new year. Always lots of new insights and guidance from Spirit. And my most exciting announcement, if you've read my book, Wolf's Message, this coming year in 2025, we're going to have new movie screenings to share with all of you as we share Wolf's Message in a documentary. So let me go back to that one. Wolf's Message is the most amazing story based on my book that proves we are souls here and now, and that the soul often knows things before they come to our human awareness. So if you're not on my email list, please get on there so you know when all of these events and when they are coming to pass and when that movie's coming out. And just before I jump into part 2 of Archangel Michael is Real, if you haven't yet subscribed to my website, no, not my website, my YouTube channel, please do so now, because we are cranking out new content twice a week at least. In fact, tomorrow, a short video about a great God wink from my angels is going to go up, just a little 4-minute video, and every Sunday, longer videos. So enough of that. On with part 2 of evidence from Archangel Michael. How do we know that what we're tuning into when we expand our consciousness can be trusted? For me, you've heard me say several times already, I'm an evidence-based medium. What is evidence? Evidence are things that the medium or you in your meditation couldn't possibly know. You ask Spirit to give you those things so you can validate it later. This builds trust. This is what has resulted in me absolutely trusting the things that I hear in my readings, the adventures I have in consciousness, because I ask for the evidence all the time. So you've already met Dr. Gary Schwartz a couple times in this talk. He reached out to me, this is years later, after the story I just shared with you. And he said, as he often does as part of his research, I need you to do a reading for me, but I can't tell you anything about the client. I said, no problem, Gary. And he says, this guy is actually in Florida and he would like to sit with you in person. And I said, that's fine. I love in-person readings. So this man, whose name is John, he actually wrote about this in the book. So it's validated not only from me, but in his book. His name is John Audette, Audettete. I can't remember the name of his book right now. And he did not name me by name. He didn't name a lot of the people in his book by name. But if you hear this story now, you'll recognize it when you read it in his book. He sat down and I said, all right, so Dr. Schwartz has sent you he knows that I tune into people's loved ones. Let me see who's here for you. I tuned in and I barely felt the presence of a father. I could barely get enough of a personality sense to really bring him to life for John. So I'm getting a little nervous. I could barely feel a mother. And I just said, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on here. My connection is usually so much more clear, but I'm not getting enough to show you that the spirit world is real. And I said, what did you really hope to get from this reading today? And John said, well, I'm hoping to do a project with Dr. Schwartz. So I was hoping that you could get some information that would allow him to trust me more. And I said, well, then you really weren't interested in a standard mediumship reading. You want more guidance from the higher realms. And he said, yes. And I thought that was unusual because it's not my normal way of working, but certainly if you can tap into the loved ones in spirit, you can tap in higher. Any of us can. We are souls, all of us, here and now. And mediumship, connecting across the veil, does not take place human to spirit. It takes place soul to soul, energy field to energy field in scientific terms. So, okay, I tune in and guess what I feel? Much to my great surprise, a presence descends upon me, one that I recognized very clearly as Archangel Michael. And I'm thinking, oh my God, here I am with a businessman who wants to work with Dr. Schwartz, and Archangel Michael is showing up. I'm not going to tell him. So I just started telling him what I heard from Archangel Michael. It was very unusual for Michael to drop in on me in a reading. I'd felt him in my meditation in the ensuing time since the experience on the trail. He was one of my teachers, but not in a reading. So finally, the information was striking home so well with John that he looked at me and he said, who is it that's telling you all of this? And I said, well, it's Archangel Michael. And to my great relief, he didn't laugh, he didn't scoff, he didn't roll his eyes. Instead, he leaned in and he said, ask him if we have ever met. Anybody else have goosebumps? I've learned as a medium, don't question anything unless it's harmful, and this is not. So I said silently, Michael, have you and John ever met? I said, he says, yes, you did. John said, ask him what he was wearing. And I reported, Michael says he was dressed all in white. John says, ask him what he looked like. I said, he shows me he looks like he's stepping through the fog. And I found a great picture to kind of visualize that. John says, ask him what he was carrying. I ask him, and he says he was carrying a Bible. He said, ask him what we talked about. I asked Archangel Michael, I said, he says you talked about death and dying. And John said, that's all I need to hear. And I felt Archangel Michael withdraw. And I will share with you now that then John shared with me the following story. About 20 years earlier, he decided to go to a conference with Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's now passed, but she was the leading expert on grief and death and dying. And he was traveling through back country roads on a very dark night, and he was getting very sleepy. And he knew he should have pulled over, but he didn't. He kept going on, and he's kind of nodding off a little when suddenly on the side of the road, he sees a figure coming out as if from the fog. And he pulled over and said, what are you doing out here? There's nothing out here. And the man was dressed all in white. And what do you think he's carrying? A Bible. And he said, get in, I'll give you a ride. So now John's not falling asleep, right? He's not going to drive off the road because he has a passenger. And so they get to talking. The stranger says to him, where are you going? And he says, I'm going to this conference. What's it about? It's about death and dying. And John looks at him and he says, where are you going? And I swear, John tells me, the man answered back, I'm headed to Vegas. Which shows that those in the spirit world have a great sense of humor. And why wouldn't they? So they talked about death and dying until a certain point when the passenger said, that's as far as I need to go. Thanks for the ride. And he wrote something on a piece of paper, put it on the glove box and said, I'll get out right here. John said, are you sure? He said, yeah. He got out of the car. John drove off, looked in the rearview mirror, and of course, he was gone. And of course, he looked in the glove box and there was nothing there. We read stories like this all the time and we question them with good reason. I could not deny the same presence that gave me, this is coherence, this is coherence, gave me the direct and absolutely accurate answers to John's questions. I questioned myself later. Could I have been reading his mind? That story is clearly part of his memories. It's in his energy field. But there is a distinct difference when working with higher consciousness between tuning into data in someone's energy field and communicating, goosebumps, real time in a two-way conversation with a sentient being who is so powerful and so loving, who comes to those who fight for freedom from the ego and stand for love, the awareness that we are all connected by the one field of divine light, by God, by spirit. That is our source. Archangel Michael arises from that source. You arise from that source. And that is why you can connect with your loved ones who have passed during the holiday season or any time of the year. Why you can connect with guides. Can't get through life without them very easily, so I hope you're calling on them. And why you can connect with angels and archangels. They have explained to me that your loved ones across the veil have a bigger perspective, a higher perspective. They can see what you're up to and what's coming just down the road. They can help you to the best of your ability, most of all by sending you signs, by putting beautiful thoughts and inspiration in your mind. Angels and guides are higher. They see a little more of the picture, but they don't have all the answers. Guides are here to work with you and your family. Angels have an even higher perspective. They're here to work with groups of people to help us with specific issues. But the archangels, as Michael told me, can work with all of humanity, just like the other masters, like Jesus. And all of us have access to them because we are also spirit, God in expression. We are all souls of the one soul. And archangels don't just help one soul at a time. They can multitask better than any of us. So call on them. I told you that I would talk about that coherence, right? This is coherence. This is coherence. What is coherence? It's an energetic term talking about frequencies and sine waves. When energy is in phase, when you have two frequency streams and they're flowing with the same amplitude and their troughs and their peaks match, it's called coherence. It's resonance. You know resonance when you meet someone and you just click with them. That means you're in a coherent state. What's the opposite of coherence? Incoherence. We all know what it feels like to be incoherent. In fact, I was a little incoherent this morning and had to come up here and do my very own 10-minute transformation meditation from that gifts page I showed you to clear my energy field so that I could once again get into a more coherent state and allow my guides to help me share this with all of you. Learning to drop instantly into a state of coherence will improve your ability to connect with your loved ones better than anything else you do. And what is the fastest way to get coherent? Drop awareness into your heart and think of something you're grateful for. Gratitude brings about coherence almost instantly. Don't just think about it, feel that gratitude, and then turn up the love. And now go through the steps to shift and invite in a loved one or Archangel Michael, or maybe play around with that antenna concept. I hope you've enjoyed this. I told you there would be a special PS at the end. It was only 2 days ago that Spirit nudged me and said, retell the Archangel Michael story. Add on what happened with John Audette in his reading. Make this special for Christmas Eve. And so I rushed and put these slides together yesterday, sent out the email calling you all to be here. Today, the only 2 things on my calendar on Christmas Eve are this recording live with all of you now and a reading that I'm doing at 4 o'clock today. My scheduling assistant, Patty, makes that happen. I tell her I have an opening, and I kind of surprise myself by saying, hey, I'll do a reading on Christmas Eve at 4 o'clock Eastern time. See if you can fill it. And I thought in my mind, maybe she'll schedule somebody with a child across the veil. Having a child myself across the veil, that is always a very special kind of reading. So Patty knows to only put the minimum details from the list, the waiting list, on the calendar. So I looked at my phone to see what little details I needed to know about today's reading, and it said, this is a redo from last September, a year ago. You made a note to redo this reading because Archangel Michael showed up the first time. Patty had no idea I was going to do this video today. I had no idea until 2 days ago I was going to do this video today. I was trying to think earlier of the handful of times, besides the one with John Audette, when Archangel Michael has shown up in my readings. And it was for the woman who's signed up today. Why did I want to redo it? Not because it was a bad reading, because it was a miraculous reading. I went back and I found the recording from that reading. This purple blue light came down around my client, who I'll be seeing today, and came right across her head and across her torso. And I said, do you see that purple blue light? It was supernatural. And then it disappeared. Everything around her got glowy when it was there. And when it disappeared, it got really clear. I'm going to be sharing these photos in my monthly connection webinar that I do every month. The next one is January. You can find it on the events page on my homepage. I'm going to be sharing the actual picture. I blur out her face of this purple blue light. And I tuned in and I said, this is Archangel Michael. He's present. He's telling me you are having health challenges. She gave me permission to share this last year. And she said, yes, I am. As I started talking, the light came down again and grew even bigger and spread over her left breast. And I said, he's telling me with the goosebumps that you have breast cancer. And she said, yes, I do. The light was going right there. This is that familiar presence of the Archangel. And I said, I know you are going to be healed. That's why we rescheduled it. And it's today, and I didn't know. So do you see how spirit flows and unfolds in wondrous ways in our lives? I can't wait for 4 o'clock today to watch how this reading unfolds. I hope that today's video has filled you with the awe and the sacredness of the spirit world and the understanding that you are spirit too, and that there is only one world, and it is populated with humans and beautiful creatures here that we love, and it is populated with our loved ones who have passed, and with guides and angels and archangels. And yes, we go through periods of darkness often because that's the way we learn and grow in this challenging life of duality. But when we can learn to set that aside long enough to expand our consciousness and to affirm, I am the light of consciousness. I am a drop of this sea of consciousness. I am God in expression. That, my friends, is freedom. That awareness of our total indivisible connection as light beings with each other, that is love. I hope this has added a little extra sparkle in the holidays. If you're watching this beyond the holidays, may it carry you through every day, this awareness, and may it encourage you to dive farther into this wondrous journey that you, the soul, agreed to embark upon. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me today for this special session and for joining me on this journey.